What is the most scalable strategy for your Facebook ads? How do we get from hundreds a day to thousands a day at a profit? Should we be focused on day one profitability or long-term customer value? Today, we're gonna break down the 4 things that you need to know to maximize your growth potential so that you can ultimately scale with stability and confidence and get the success that you deserve. Let's go. Welcome to this week's 5-Minute Friday. Now, before we get started, I just want to say thank you very much. These types of videos have been blowing up the channel. So once again, thank you so much for all of your support. And if you like these videos, go ahead and like this video. And if you have any questions on this video, go ahead and drop it in the comment section down below. Or if you've had success with these videos, or if you have suggestions for other videos, go ahead and drop them there too. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. Apparently only 35 to 40% of people that binge this channel are actually subscribed. So let's go ahead and fix that. Now, with all that being said, let's get started. Let's put 5 minutes on the clock and get to it. So the first thing we need to cover is day one profitability versus long-term customer value. So a lot of advertisers focus on day one profitability, trying to maximize the margin per transaction anywhere possible. And the most popular way of doing this is with cost control bidding on Facebook, like cost caps. Now, while cost caps make sense for short-term gains, they ultimately force you to prioritize single transactions. This approach often gets in the way of building far more valuable long-term customer relationships because it prioritizes day one actions. This also really gets in the way of some core fundamentals around business development and machine learning, and we'll get to that more later. But as a sneak peek, you can either do 12 things poorly, or you can be a specialist and do one thing exceptionally well. And let me give you a hint, a little bit of foreshadowing. Specialists make a lot more money. You can get early wins where you can spike your budget, but at the end of the day, all of that success is very temporary. Your ads will fatigue quickly. What works today is not by any means guaranteed to work tomorrow, and what worked last week might never work again. This makes running a business almost impossible. Instead, the more scalable strategy when trying to grow a business is focusing on acquiring more valuable customer journeys. When you prioritize these customers, you build a foundation for sustainable and scalable long-term business growth. So the second thing we need to cover is volume of transactions versus margin per transaction. This is one of the most controversial parts of this business and really what separates performance marketers from businesses that are growing. And this is the conversation between volume and margin. It is far more valuable to have a high volume of transactions, even at a lower margin, than it is to have a smaller volume of transactions at a much higher margin. Volume at scale beats high margin on low volume every single time. And this brings us to our first big takeaway today, and I really want you to write this down. The first transaction in a customer journey is the least profitable. But this opens the door to so much more value over time. So we foreshadowed this a little bit before, but the next thing we gotta cover is leveraging Facebook's machine learning. The single greatest advantage Facebook brings us, besides the fact that it touches more people than anything in the world except for the sun, is the machine learning artificial intelligence. When you give it a focused objective, like finding customers who are likely to buy a second time, it can optimize to condition human behavior and understand how to bring you a higher quality of customer at a higher volume with it doing the work instead of you. Remember, it's the ads manager. You shouldn't be doing the hard work. That's what the entire machine was built to do. And let's think about it in the real world. When something is really important to you, do you go to a generalist or a specialist? If you needed brain surgery, would you go to the ER? And for that matter, is your business important enough to you that it deserves the attention of a specialist? Specialization isn't only more powerful, it's far, far more efficient. When you treat it as a specialist, optimizing and training it to acquire high-value customers versus one-time buyers, it becomes substantially easier to manage and scale. And this brings us to the second thing that I want you to write down today. Having a single, clear goal requires fewer resources to manage and is far more stable and sustainable when you scale it. Now let's get to the key to scaling, and this is promoting repeat purchases. If you've ever watched any of my videos or any episode of Shark Tank, you know cash flow is everything. If you try to sell 1,000 different things to 1,000 different people, it's essentially impossible to optimize your results over time. But if you're selling the right offer to the right customers, you're building a group more likely to buy again. And because you really only need to solve one problem instead of 1,000, it becomes substantially easier to understand how to improve the conversion rate, the AOV, and the second purchase rate of that customer. Which means you scale your cash flow, your profit volume, and your ad spend in a very predictable and easy to manage way. And at the end of the day, that's kind of what it's all about. So the last thing I want you to write down today is pretty simple. The most scalable strategy is the one that promotes repeat purchases. When your strategy is built around short wins at any cost, anywhere, you're ultimately just playing the lottery in sort of a game of whack-a-mole, desperately trying to cling on to any results you had yesterday. And that's a very hard way about making tomorrow brighter. You need to make the mental shift from being a good salesperson to buying the right type of customer. So focus on building a scalable strategy with your Facebook ads by prioritizing the acquisition of customers who will buy over and over again. And if you want to know more about how I would set up a campaign, I laid out this video right here that goes step by step on everything from setting up a Facebook page to building a campaign that will scale essentially on autopilot. This is every step of the way, written down, button by button, point to point, menu to menu, with best practice tips for every single thing, and the entire video is searchable. I highly recommend you check that out. Until next time, I'll see you on the internet.